we are here to dive back in to Heartstopper, Comics vs. Show. So today we're going to look at episode 3 of season 2 of Heartstopper, the show. NANI? And this got really long, so we're gonna stop here for now. Part 2 will be out next Friday. So then they're walking along down the hallway, and Ms. Singh says, "Nick, can I see you in my office, please?" And Nick and Charlie both look very confused. Like, what could she possibly have to talk to Nick about? Ms. Singh says, "You're the new rugby captain starting September." And Nick's like, "What? Am I?" He's really surprised and really pleased. And she says, "You're the heart and center of this team, Nick. You have the talent to pursue rugby beyond school if you want to." And he says, "Wow, thank you, wow." And then there's a ... and she's like, I'd also recommend finding somewhere a little more discreet to make out with your boyfriend." And Nick immediately is like super blush. And she says, "I'm glad Charlie settled into the team. I've been keeping an eye on him. I know he's been a target of some pretty severe bullying in the past. If I hear you've done anything to hurt him, we'll be having words, all right?" And Nick's like, "Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't." And she goes on, "And if any of the other boys do or say anything spiteful to you or Charlie, just come straight to me, okay? I'll sort them out." And Nick says, yeah, I will. Thanks, miss." And then there's a pause as she looks at the photo on her desk and she says, "I met my wife playing university sport in the early noughties. People gave us a lot of shit. Things are a little better now, but you never know." And then she shifts back into like teacher mode. "Well, if you want to chat about anything, you know where to find me, Captain Nelson." And Nick stands up all smiley, says, "Thanks, miss." And she says, "Have a good summer holiday." And he says, "You too, miss." And then we close on her looking at the picture of her and her wife. It's interesting that she basically tells him, like warns him not to hurt Charlie. It's clear in the comics version that the reason he is in her office is, number one, so she can tell him that he's the captain. And number two, so she can be like, "Don't you hurt Charlie," which is really interesting. And I actually think that the tone that the show goes for, I think I prefer that. Because the whole reason he's in her office is because of what happened in the equipment room. She's not there to tell him anything about becoming captain because he's already the captain. The reason he's there is because she walked in on him and Charlie kissing, and he is the captain of the team, and that's something they need to discuss. And that's what Nick thinks. When he walks in, it's pretty clear he thinks he's in trouble. And also that he has no idea that Ms. Singh, he doesn't know if she's even an ally, let alone a fellow queer person. So he looks understandably quite nervous as he comes in.
"You wanted to see me, miss?"
"Come sit down, Nick."
And, you know, his body language, his posture, the look on his face, it's clear he's kind of freaked out. He doesn't know what she's going to say to him. And it's also interesting that as he walks in, you can clearly see the picture of her and her wife sitting on her desk, which is nice. So we start off with her saying,
"I appointed you captain last year because you were the only one who could make these boys into a team."
I think Nick again is thinking like, oh, she's going to yell at me. Maybe she's going to demote me from captain. Because, you know, I'm sure he sees all of his quote-unquote failures with the lack of cohesion in the team and everything that's been going on lately. And now she's caught him making out with a teammate in the equipment room.
"I've sensed some distance has grown between you and most of the lads."
And again, Nick just looks like he's in trouble.
"I don't want to make any assumptions, but I assume this has something to do with it."
"I guess so."
So Nick comes in, he looks very worried and like he thinks he's about to be yelled at. And Ms. Singh kind of confirms his suspicions by being like, "You know, I brought you in because I wanted you to bring the team together, but it seems like there's been some distance. And is it because of the fact that you're with Charlie, or, you know, the fact that you are a queer person?" Is basically where it's going. But it doesn't go the direction he thinks. It doesn't go the direction of her yelling at him or blaming him. She immediately goes into,
"If any of the lads say anything out of line, you tell me immediately, all right?"
And just the look of surprise on Nick's face as he realizes that not only is he not in trouble, but she's got his back. She's on his side. And I like this so much better than the comics version, because in the comics version, we see this protective side of her, but it's only protecting Charlie, and it's even protecting Charlie from Nick. I think it makes so much more sense for her to surround Nick with her protection. You know, she's already protecting Charlie. We've seen her ask him about bullying before. But the fact that now she is being, to Nick, what Mr. Ajayi is to Charlie. Someone who will protect him, someone who has his back, who understands what he's going through. I think that means so much to Nick, and it's so important for queer kids to have someone like that in their lives. And then she goes into a similar story where she tells him about her own experience at uni.
When I was at uni, things were pretty bad. That was in women's rugby. Lots of lesbians in women's rugby. That's how I met my wife.
Nick again looks shocked at the revelation that the photo on Ms. Singh's desk of her embracing a woman is in fact her and her wife.
None of the guys know about me, so,
Well, you don't owe them that information, okay?
And the fact that she just looks at him and smiles and, like, she's just so supportive here and giving him a place where he can talk about this kind of thing. And up until now, like, he's been able to talk to Tara and Darcy, he's been able to talk to Charlie, but this is his first experience of having, like, a queer adult person who went through a similar experience and reached a happy, not a happy ending, but is living a happy life with their partner. And I think it's really great that Nick gets to see this in Ms. Singh.
thank you, Miss.
And, maybe keep the kissing outside of team practice.
Just before he leaves, she's like, yeah, maybe don't make out with your boyfriend at practice. So in the show then, we go through this montage of Charlie helping Nick with his studies, Nick taking his exam, Tao figuring out how to ask out girls, Elle specifically. School lets out. The next scene we have that matches up with the comics is the Paris trip meeting. So in the comics, we go from the Ms. Singh scene into the David plotline, which happened in episode 2. Nick goes home after rugby practice and finds David there, and then the next morning he comes in and he's all messed up because of David. And Charlie and Nick talk about how they're going to tell their friends about their relationship at the Paris meeting. We have the Year 10-11 Paris trip information evening for parents and students. So in the comics, the information evening is for parents and students, whereas in the show, it's just the students who attend. So we have Nick and his mom and Charlie and his dad, the best parent combination that we could possibly have in the comics. So Nick and Charlie head over to find their friends. We have Aled and Tao hanging out together. And Aled says, hey, I feel like we've hardly seen you two lately. And Nick says, exams have been ruining our lives. And Tao says, I relate. Of course, again, in the comics, there was never any tension between Tao and Nick. So they're just completely friendly with each other. Then we have Hey Boys, and Tara, Darcy, and Elle show up, break off from their parents, and head on over. It's interesting that Tara comes with her parents. Elle comes with her mom. Darcy, no parents in sight, which makes sense with what we know about Darcy's home life. And is also interesting because, you know, Darcy and Tara are very coupley. Tara sits on Darcy's lap. They definitely wouldn't feel comfortable doing that if Darcy's parents were around. So it seems like Darcy's parents are not at this function at all. So Elle and Tao sit next to each other, and Tao's like, hey, and Elle is like, hi. And we have some discussion amongst the group of just small talk, and Tao and Elle being cute together and looking all blushy, and a ... between Nick and Charlie. And then Nick whispers, have they kissed yet? And Charlie says, I don't think so. And Nick says, they really need to. These meddling gays. Tao and Elle exchanging glances when they think the other is not looking. And Nick is like, do you think now's the right time to tell them about us? And Charlie says, maybe it would encourage them to actually deal with their feelings. And Darcy says one of my favorite lines, what are you whispering about and can I be involved? They have this whole whispered discussion about, like, you know, Nick says, we're trying to work out how to tell Charlie's friends about us. And Darcy says, just say it, man. It's not like they'll react badly, is it? And Charlie says, well, no, but... And before they can tell anybody, we have good evening year 10s and 11s of Truman and Higgs, and good evening parents. Mr. Ajayi and Mr. Farouk start off the presentation. So it's interesting that in the comics, the big focus of the Paris trip meeting is the fact that Nick and Charlie are going to tell their friends about their relationship, or tell Charlie's friends about their relationship. Whereas in the show, Charlie's friends already know. They found out last season, even Tao. So we don't have that plot at all. So the Paris trip meeting, as a result, doesn't really have as much to it, plot-wise, which is fine. But it's also very, like, ridiculously short as a result. So in the show, again, we just have the students, no parents are there. Tara asking Isaac about what he is reading, Ben leaning on Imogen's shoulder, and Sahar being introduced to the group. We have Mr. Ajayi and Mr. Farouk having a much-needed moment together.
Are you also having regrets about signing up for this?
It'll be a laugh, won't it?
So the door is open because Benny needed to go use the litter box, but otherwise that looks kind of spooky that it's just like... So we also have James coming to Isaac and inviting him to the party, and of course everyone else as well.
Do you want to come to that end of exams party tonight?
Yeah, and all your friends should come too, obviously.
And so here we have Nick suggesting to Charlie that he come out to the rugby lads at the party.
I could come out at the party to some of the rugby guys, so if it goes badly, we could just leave.
So in the comics, the thing that relates to coming out is that Nick and Charlie are going to tell Charlie's friends about their relationship, whereas in the show, it's Nick suggesting to Charlie that while they're at the Paris meeting, that after the meeting, at the party, he come out to the rugby lads. So there is kind of a connection there. Alright, so going back to the comics, so we have Mr. Ajayi saying we've got a lot of information to get through this evening, which is not the case. Not the case in the show. They have they say 3 things and they're done. And Mr. Ajayi says, my name is Mr. Ajayi. I teach art at Higgs. Obviously, he teaches at Truum in the show. And Mr. Farouk says, and I'm Mr. Farouk. I teach physics at Truum. And Nick's like, we'll tell them after the talk. And Charlie says, yeah. And we have, we'll be supervising the Paris trip this year, ... So we have kind of the implication that they've talked about many things. And then we get to Mr. Farouk saying, lastly, rooms will be shared by groups of 4, and no, there will be no mingling between boys and girls. Higgs girls must share with Higgs girls, and Truum boys with Truum boys. Everybody's like, groan. And Mr. Ajayi says, I know, but it's not appropriate for couples to be sharing rooms. And we have some sly smiles from the queer couples. And then we have, now we need one person from each group to come up to the front to write down your names. So we have Sahar, Tara, Darcy, and Elle, and then Nick, Charlie, Aled, and Tao. And of course, in the show, Tao is not even there because he's off getting his hair cut and buying a dozen roses or whatever for Elle. So Tao and Elle are both the representatives of their group and head up to the front. And then Nick and Charlie are left alone with Aled, who's doodling on his paper. They turn to him, and Charlie's like, hey, Aled. And Aled says, mm-hmm. And Charlie says, we kind of wanted to talk to you about something. And Aled's like, hmm? And Charlie says, well, I guess this is a bit random, but we wanted to let you know that we're going out, me and Nick. We're dating. And we have a ... from Aled, and then he smiles and says, I thought so. Which, obviously. And Nick and Charlie are both very surprised. And Aled says, you haven't been quite as subtle as you think you have. They have not been subtle at all, even in the comics. And he says, Elle knows too. I think we worked it out when we all went bowling. But then Aled says, but don't tell Tao yet. And Charlie's like, what? Why? And Aled drops this bombshell. He might have been the reason you got outed last year. It was an accident. We were just chatting in the corridor. He was saying how happy he was that you decided to tell us, but someone might have overheard. He would never, ever tell anyone deliberately, but he's loud and chatty and can't keep secrets. Don't tell him right before the Paris trip. And Charlie just looks shocked and devastated. And Nick says, Charlie, it's okay, And Tao comes back. Okay, all done, la la la. He says, also got us some itineraries. And Nick's like, thanks. And Nick says, Charlie. And Charlie says, it's fine. Just see them from a distance. In the show, of course, we don't get any of this. They are once again asked to get into groups of 4.
So, we'll now ask you to get into groups of 4, who will be the people you share hotel rooms with.
And we've been told to inform you that boys and girls cannot share rooms.
And we have the information that boys and girls cannot share rooms. Oh noes. Smiles from the queer kids.
Oh dear. Oh no.
So then we get into groups of 4, and we have the sadness of Imogen being left out. Poor Imogen. I wonder who she ended up rooming with. And then we have the wondering of where Tao is.
Where is Tao?
And then we're just done. We're just done with the meeting. So I guess it's possible that more happened, but the fact that Mr. Ajayi and Mr. Farouk are like, well, that wasn't too bad,
That was fairly painless.
suggests that that was it. So not much was accomplished in the Paris trip meeting except the fact that they got into their groups of 4. Okay, so anyway, at that point, they walk outside, they see Tao, and we go into the rest of the episode, which is, you know, the gang going to the bonfire party in the woods, Tao and Elle going on their ill-fated date, and everything spirals out of control, and we end up with teenagers chanting fire, fire, fire in the middle of the woods, which is always a good time. So, yes. So, as I said, this is one of my favorite episodes, if not my favorite episode of the season. And the reason for that is that I just really love everything that we get from Nick in this episode and everything that we come to understand about what he's going through. But these parts of the comics are very interesting as well. I think it's very interesting to look at some of the subtle differences and the choices that were made between the comics and the show here, where we have things like, you know, Ms. Singh's treatment of Nick in her office, or, you know, the fact that the Paris trip meeting involves Nick and Charlie trying to tell their friends about their relationship. Wow, I lost my train of thought. Or the fact that the Paris trip meeting in the comics is not only a lot longer, but involves Nick and Charlie telling Aled about their relationship, and Aled dropping the bomb that we don't find out until the Paris trip. And Aled dropping the bomb that Tao is possibly the reason why Charlie got outed, which I like a lot better the way that they do it in the show, where Tao is the one to tell Charlie, and Charlie's reaction is just like momentarily stunned, but immediately like, it wasn't your fault, it was an accident. Whereas in this, I think he wrestles with it a lot more and ultimately decides not to tell Tao because of that, because he's worried that Tao will accidentally let something slip again. So I do like how that was handled better in the show. But, okay, so what are your thoughts with comics versus show for episode 3? In general, my preference for this episode in particular skews more toward the show. I think that the way that they set things up, of how things progress, and the subtle shifts in how things go, I think works really well. And of course, I'm just a big fan of this episode in general, so I like the show better. But the comics are also great and have a lot to recommend them, always, of course. Okay, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, so one thing about the comics versus show videos is that they take some time and some effort to work on. So I am going to be releasing other videos that are shorter and don't involve so much work. So please be patient with me as I work to get these out, because I want to not just be doing these videos only because they take up so much time. So thank you so much for watching, and a huge thanks as always to our patrons, who are amazing and wonderful and fantastic and great and perfect and magnificent. And a special shout out to our Nick Nelson members, Kelly Walker, Paul Z, Kent Smither, Kim Engel, and Lauren Javier. Okay, well that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and liking and commenting and all the wonderful things that you do. And yes, if you would like to become a member of the Patreon, there's a link below, so go check that out. Alright, well have a wonderful rest of your day or night or whatever time of day it may happen to be, and I'll see you next time. Alright, bye.